Well, it's finally here. The highly anticipated limited edition Smartwool and Grateful Dead collection has finally dropped exclusively at smartwool.com.
You may know Smartwool as the go-to brand for all things merino wool, from socks to base layers. Smartwool has been keeping people comfortable outside for decades with some of the softest and ethically sourced merino wool out there.
Well, Smartwool's limited edition collection and collaboration with the Grateful Dead is back by popular demand right in time for the holidays.
From t-shirts and hoodies to beanies and socks, now you can have the next level comfort of Smartwool with all your favorite iconic Grateful Dead designs. Shop the drop exclusively at smartwool.com and get it before it's gone for good. Gone for good. That's Smartwool, SMARTWOOL.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to this special episode of Undermine, brought to you by our partners at Smartwool. I'm here with Tom and Benji. Hey guys.
Hello.
Hi, RJ.
Hey, so for this bonus episode, we thought that it would be fun to talk about shows where we were most in need of wool, Smartwool, whether that's socks, base layers, maybe something dry, all the things that you can find at smartwool.com. And we're happy to partner with them, pushing out this limited edition Grateful Dead collection that they have. But Tom, I think we had similar thoughts, although I might pivot based on what you have to say about it. But what's a show where you were maybe most in need of wool?
I definitely needed Smartwool at Jones Beach, July 13th, 2013. And even though it was July, it was freezing rain coming from way up in the upper atmosphere, and the wind was outrageous. It was so cold. And this show, I stood next to Ernie, Trey's dad, and I remember he was all the way zipped up in one of those yellow fishing boat parkas, and just his face was sticking out, and it was pure waterproof. And I was jealous because my clothing had already soaked through. Earlier out in the lot, I don't know if you remember, RJ, if we are talking about the same show, people had rigged up multi-vehicle tents with tarps. And I remember going from like enclave to enclave, just saying hi to people randomly and stopping in for the party. And everyone was friendly, but everyone was like, taking shelter from the rain. It was so fierce that many of these like shelters blew away with us under them, and then we'd run to another better secured one. And the water was doing that like flash flood thing, and it had already like covered my feet. So in some places it was many inches deep, and in the venue, I remember it was deep for some sections of seats. I'm amazed that they even put on the show. But so I've hiked and camped the entire Appalachian Trail of New Jersey, and a lot in New York and Vermont too. And one thing that I've learned from camping is that cotton is called the death fabric, jeans. If it gets wet, it can hold many times its weight in water.
That's so nice. And
so it never dries, and it loses its insulating properties immediately. So it's bad news for boating, and it's bad news for camping if you might get wet. Never wear jeans. You wear synthetic clothes, or you might have guessed it, wool. Wool is a natural fabric that does shed water and does retain insulating qualities when it gets wet, when it's wet outside. And it does dry quite fast when the rain stops. Trey made sure we got some water songs that night, by the way. We got Water in the Sky, song I heard the ocean sing, Waiting in the Velvet Sea. Although you guys would be more interested in the tweezer and the reprise, I'm sure. But anyway, wear that Smartwool if it's going to rain.
So, okay, thanks, Tom. And I was at that show. We're talking about the same show. There were a few things. Number one, at the time, you could not buy alcohol inside of Jones Beach Theater, right? I think that's changed. But so we're in there. The only place you could stay dry in the entire place was like the opening between the sections, So like basically everyone who was trying to stay dry during the first set was in the same spot and like the entrances to the bathrooms. And it was like a, 12 or so song first set. And it was, it was crazy because the Rebo, which is really good, it's just out there. I mean, it's clearly like they were just trying to like get the show, the set over with. And the amazing part was that the second set, it stopped raining and a lot of people left, like many people left. And so I ended up just walking down basically to the rail for the second set, which, like you said, Tom, it had Rock and Roll into 2001, into Tweezer, into Cities, into The Wedge, and then Velvet Sea, Character Zero. And there's Sleeping Monkey Encore and a Tweezer reprise. And, that it was worth it. And I'm really glad I didn't leave, but it was really miserable. I don't even think I had a raincoat. I think I was just soaking wet and it was just miserable. And so I agree with you about that. I'll just give a shout out to Coventry as a place where I needed something because my shoes came off in the mud. So I had another pair of shoes that I tied like tightly and I slept with my shoes on because I just didn't take them off the whole time after I lost my flip-flops in the mud. And I think everyone there could have used some, extra clothes. Benji, what do you have to say about that? And what's your pick?
Well, I think for Coventry, we needed a collective. We needed like one giant, rescue squad or something. We needed more than wool.
They're still harvesting shoes from that field, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think I probably have a pair of flip flops in there somewhere.
Everyone does.
If you see them, return them, please. I want them back. But most in need of wool. RJ, Tom, I think I'm gonna be Undermine's Gonzo delegation here. But I'll do it in the name of entertaining our listeners. In the fall of 1999, I set out for Manifest Destiny, but fish tour style, driving all the way from the East Coast, my little town of Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, all the way to first it was Vancouver on 9/9/99, but then the next day it was at the Gorge, and it was a big moment for me. The Gorge was a famed venue. I'd heard all about it. And, like everybody does when you go in there, at the top of the hill, I kind of paused to just take it all in. And it was a blazing hot day. I remember that. But then leaving the venue that night on a head full, on the first night on September 10th, I got swept up in a parade, or at least here's the thing. I thought it was a parade. It was a group of people walking. They're celebrating. They're saying things, out loud. They're shuffling. They're laughing. It's a parade. And I recognized that energy, and I just decided I was going to get swept up on it, But of course, another way of looking at it would just be it was a large crowd of people leaving a venue. So now at the Gorge, 99% of the people who go to the Gorge, at least especially the Gorge in 1999, you end up camping there overnight, either in tents or an RV. I had neither. But since the closest hotel with any vacancy was 3 hours away, before the show, my friend and I decided we were going to sleep in his car, after the show. Now, another thing about the Gorge that I didn't know at the time, because being from the East Coast, I didn't realize that it's high desert, which meant that even though it was blazing hot in the afternoon, it would be freezing cold by nighttime. And the extremes at that point, that was unheard of to me. If it, so I was in a t-shirt and shorts for the show. I don't think I noticed the temperature drop at all during the show because I was dancing and I was sweating and I was in my own little world. And also, of course, I was on chemicals that are designed to rob you of your ability to correctly assess a temperature. So I'm caught up in this parade, and I'm having a grand old time, by the way. I'm yelling wild proclamations, things like they would never stand for this in Norway, or like it was Mr. Potato Head after all. Just like totally random.
Every parade has one of you.
Totally, exactly right.
This is so great.
Death is imminent. I would yell like random things like that. And so the parade.
That's called raining on a parade, by the way.
Yeah, totally. Well, the parade takes me way, way, way past where my friend's car was by what felt like a country mile. And then eventually a weird thing happens to the parade. Uh-oh. One by one, my fellow paraders, who, by the way, I was not engaging in direct dialogue with, they kind of just disappeared in tents, one by one and two by two. And I was becoming suspicious at this point that maybe it wasn't a parade after all. It was, but it ended when, people arrived at their campsite and suddenly I'm by myself, nowhere to go, no parade to lead me home. And it is cold. And I'm on the other side of the camping area from my friend's car, which means I'm completely lost, and I'm out of my head. I make the most of it. I make friends with strangers, and I spondle around. I have some type of fun. Eventually, I find my friend's car. It's like 4 a.m. at this point. I'm shivering because it's so cold. My friend is in the car, and I can hear him snoring from outside, but the doors are locked. And so, I knock, and he's snoring in there. I knock louder. He's still snoring. And, all my stuff is in the car with him. My hoodies, everything is in the car. And I guess that meant that it was safe because the car is locked, but it also meant that I couldn't get to it. And I also had no place to sleep. And I knock louder. I start shouting his name. I'm rocking the car. It's one of those things like from the movies. I wake up all the neighbors. They're all yelling at me, and cursing at me, so I had no other option at that point. I remember, with my own brand of humor at the time, I remember thinking to myself humorously, this is my loneliest night on the planet. And because I had no other option but to lay down on the cold brown earth. It's like 5 a.m, and I knew I'd be, chuckling and laughing about it years later, or even the next day. But what happened next, I'll never forget this. And this is where Smartwool really could have come in handy. I'm t-shirt, shorts, cold brown earth. And I find this Peter Pan hat. Someone left it behind. It's a felt hat, just a few inches.
It's left over from the parade.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's like a starving mouse, finding like a breadcrumb or something, right? So I grab it, like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is gonna save me. And I had an important decision to make. This little, 6 or 8 inch felt hat. I could either put it down beneath me as my sheet to protect me from the cold brown earth, or I could use it as my pillow, or it could be my blanket, And I'm pretty sure I tried all three out before eventually I curled up in a ball. I placed it on top of my bare arms, which were absolutely freezing. And at this point, it's shortly before sunup. I may have dozed off for less than an hour. I may have just sat there fake sleeping. I don't remember. But, there's really no punchline here other than, the sun came up. And eventually my friend wakes up and I got a few hours of sleep in the car. Like you said, there's no punchline to this other than, well, goddamn, I really wish I had Smartwool that day.
I'm so cold listening to that story. I just got very cold.
I'm going to vote Benji as the winner of who needed Smartwool.
Yeah.
Loneliest night of my life.
It's not even, and I can't believe they named that whole series Lonely Planet after you because of that. And now, we can remember that every time we see those books in the bookstore.
And now I'll never leave home without Smartwool.
That was amazing. Thank you for that story, Benji. All right. That's it for us. We were all in need of Smartwool, but you don't need to be in need of Smartwool because you can find Smartwool at smartwool.com and check out the Grateful Dead collection. It's a limited edition. It's only going to be out for a little while. So check that out. And thanks to our partners at Smartwool, and we'll be bringing you another one of these very soon.
Osiris.